Just a moment. Thank you, Shasta, for that introduction. And I don't feel like I'm an expert on it, but I have been one of the people working on the development of tribal beneficial uses for water for some time now. But it absolutely has been a joint effort with multiple people and tribal organizations such as the California Indian Environmental Alliance, or CIA, with Sherry Norris, and other tribes and tribal members, tribal staff who've been involved from the get-go. So thank you to everybody who has been a part of that. It's been at least 9 years of working on these issues. So I'm really excited that we have, so my name is Sarah Ryan. I'm the Environmental Director and Deputy Tribal Administrator at the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians. Worked for them for almost 20 years. And we are on the shores of Clear Lake, which is the largest natural freshwater lake in California. So it's really important for us to have a good, strong water quality program, as well as making sure that the water quality in Clear Lake and in the creeks that flow into Clear Lake are protected for tribal traditional uses. And so that's what's got us started on that effort, because if that lake is not healthy, if the water quality is not safe, then you're going to have an impact on the traditional uses of the tribe. And that impacts a whole lot more. So today's presentation, or today's session, has two main presentations. One is from the state, and we have Adriana, Renteria, and I apologize if I mispronounce, please repronounce properly, and I will keep that in my mind. Moises, Moreno-Rivera, Itzel, Vasquez-Rodriguez, and Chuck Striplin, who will be coming on to answer questions for anything regarding the regions, and also Javier Silva, who is a Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo Indian member, and he's currently the transportation director for one of the for Manchester Band of Pomo and Point Arena. So I will read their bios in just a moment, but we're hoping that this session will be really informative for the participants, and we will have plenty of opportunity at the end of the session for lots of questions and discussion. So thank you all very much for being a part of this conversation. I will start with the bios for folks. So we've got Adriana Renteria, who is the director of the Office of Public Participation at the California State Water Resources Control Board, which assists staff in designing and implementing effective stakeholder involvement processes to ensure that all stakeholders can meaningfully participate in water board decisions. Adriana is also the State Water Board's tribal liaison, and in this capacity, they facilitate communication and engagement between the water boards and tribal governments. Previously, Adriana was regional water manager at the Community Water Center and coordinator for the People of Color Sustainability Collective at the UC Santa Cruz American Indian Resource Center. They have years of experience improving community involvement in water quality and water rights governance, including advocating for increased access to clean water through implementation of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. They have a BS in Environmental Studies and Economics. Moises Moreno-Rivera is the Assistant Tribal Liaison at the California Water Boards within the California Environmental Protection Agency. He oversees internal tribal consultation policy implementation efforts, providing guidance to staff statewide and engaging with California Native American tribes. Moy has worked on human right to water implementation projects in California's Central Coast region, concentrating on raising public health awareness of groundwater contamination, domestic well testing, and interim replacement drinking water solutions. His passion is to advance human rights to historically marginalized communities in both the United States and Mexico. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Peace and Conflict Studies from the University of California, Berkeley, and a Master of Arts in Latin American Studies from the University of Florida. Itzel Vasquez-Rodriguez is a recent hire with the Office of Public Participation, where she focuses on tribal affairs and the SAFER program. Itzel has a background in research, nonprofit work, and advocacy in communities of color and indigenous communities. Prior to joining the State Water Board, Itzel worked as an Assembly Fellow for the Assembly member Cecilia Aguirre-Curry's office. And I mentioned also we're going to have Chuck Striplin, who's going to be answering questions at the end, so I'm going to read him along with the state staff. Chuck Strickland completed his master's and PhD in environmental science, policy, and management at the University of California, Berkeley. He attended archaeological field school at California State University, Chico, and received a dual BA in biology and environmental studies from UC Santa Cruz. After 14 years at the San Francisco Estuary Institute, Chuck has recently moved to the State Water Resources Control Board, based in the North Coast Regional Office in Santa Rosa, California. There, he continues to work on watershed protection, monitoring, stewardship, and restoration activities throughout the North Coast region. Chuck is currently managing large-scale restoration projects in the Humboldt Bay region, developing a regional water quality monitoring program in the Russian River, and working to enhance protections for resources important to tribes in the North Coast region. And then our other speaker is Javier Silva. Javier Silva is a member of the Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo, a northern Pomo tribe located in what is now Mendocino County. He currently resides on the coast at the mouth of the Noyo River, where his family has resided since time immemorial. He has worked for his tribe and other tribes for over 25 years in cultural resources, water resources, and environmental planning. He is currently working in the North Coast with tribes on water issues, ranging from drinking water, wastewater, surface and groundwater management, watershed planning, and fish and wildlife protections. He just started working with the Manchester Band of Pomo in Point Arena as a transportation director. Javier promotes utilizing traditional ecological knowledge and is an advocate for sustainable management of the environment. Javier enjoys his time fishing and gathering foods, medicines, and materials for family members and elders. So we have an amazing group of people on this panel, and I would like to move forward with our first presentation, which is from the state. So let me pull that up. All right, so Moy and others, when you want me to advance the slide, please let me know and I will do this. And this is a PDF, so I will be scrolling down.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Adriana Renteria. I'm the Director for the Office of Public Participation in the State Water Board's Tribal Liaison. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. And like Sarah mentioned, I'm here joined with my colleagues, Moises Moreno-Rivera and Itzel Vasquez-Rodriguez, as well as Chuck Strickland from the North Coast Regional Water Board. I think before we begin, we just wanted to thank Shasta, the conference organizers, and also Sarah Ryan for inviting us today and for making today's breakout session possible. We also want to thank everybody who's joined us today. I think there's almost like 80 people joining us, and that's pretty incredible. So thank you for joining this really exciting and important discussion. So today we're going to be discussing tribal beneficial uses, and tribal beneficial uses are essentially a tool that the state can use to protect the cultural uses of a water body and to ensure that that quality of water is protected and maintained. So my colleagues are going to be doing a deeper dive into what this process is like and how tribes can really help lead in this process. But if there's one thing I'd like us to take away from today's discussion, it would be that for you all as cultural stewards for your tribes, you all can play a really important role in ensuring that the water bodies that are used for cultural practices are protected and maintained for the generations to come. The other thing I want to mention before we sort of jump into our conversation today is that today is really an invitation for the beginning of ongoing dialogue or the continuation of ongoing dialogue. The tribal beneficial uses designation process is a long-term process. So we really welcome your input on how we can best support tribal participation and leadership throughout this process. So we're just looking forward to continuing our discussion even beyond this summit. All right, so I think we can move on to slide 2, which is our overview of today's conversation. So to begin, I'm going to be doing a very brief overview of who are the California Water Boards, who we are and what we do. I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague Itzel, who's going to walk us through the basin planning process and how tribal beneficial uses fit into the overall basin plan process. Next, Moises is going to be walking through how California Native American tribes can be involved. What are some questions that we can all begin thinking about in order for us to be thinking about how to get engaged into this process. And next, Moises will then give a brief overview of where the different regional water boards are in this process, and Chuck will also be sharing from his personal experiences working on tribal beneficial uses in the North Coast region. And lastly, we'll just wrap up with providing an opportunity to answer any questions or hear any comments or feedback from you all. All right, so if we can scroll to the next slide, please. All right, so moving into who are the water boards and what role we play. So the picture on your screen shows the structure of the California Environmental Protection Agency. So the California Environmental Protection Agency is the state agency that's dedicated to improving California's environment and our public health. So CalTHPO, or the California Environmental Protection Agency, oversees and coordinates the activities for the California Air Resources Board, CalRecycle, the Department of Pesticide Regulation, the Department of Toxic Substances Control, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard and Assessment, and finally, the California Water Boards. So the water boards are one of the boards that are part of this larger CalTHPO family. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the California Water Boards are made up of 9 different regional water boards, as well as 1 state water board. Yes. And so the state water board is based in Sacramento, and the other 9 regional water boards are located throughout the state. We use the term California Water Boards as the umbrella term that includes both the 9 regional water boards and the state water board. So you may be hearing these phrases used interchangeably throughout our conversation. So when we talk about the water boards, we're referring to all 10 of them, the 9 regional and also the state water board. And the mission statement for the water boards is to preserve, enhance, and restore the quality of California's water resources and drinking water for the protection of the environment, public health, and all beneficial uses, and to ensure the proper water resource allocation and efficient use for the benefit of present and future generations. So what I want to highlight in our mission statement here is the terms for the protection of all beneficial uses. This is really where tribal beneficial uses fits into our larger mission and where we start to see the water boards prioritize beneficial uses. So we work to achieve our mission through a number of different programs and policies throughout the divisions and the regions. So next slide, please. Thank you. So what does the state water boards do? So number 1, we protect water quality. So through the implementation of the Federal Clean Water Act and the Porter Cologne Water Quality Control Act, the water boards helps establish water quality standards. And through the development of these water quality standards, the state water board then develops statewide water quality protection plans and policies. In addition to general water quality protection, the water board is also responsible for ensuring safe and affordable drinking water served by public water systems. So they do this by setting regulatory standards, including establishing, what is the maximum level of contamination that is safe for public consumption. And they also regulate water systems to ensure that water systems are able to provide safe drinking water. And for the water systems that aren't able to provide safe drinking water, the state water board supports them in helping get back on track, either through funding or technical assistance, to make sure that eventually they get to a point where they're able to provide safe and affordable drinking water long term. The water boards also regulate the waters of the state. They do this through the allocation of different surface water rights and through coordination with the other regional water boards as well. Lastly, the water boards also coordinate an agency-wide tribal affairs program. So the tribal liaison and the tribal affairs program is housed within the state water board. So what this means is that if tribes would like to be added to our AB 52 consultation list to be notified of projects that may be taking place on traditional lands, we help coordinate that process. And it also means that if tribal governments would like to meet with our leadership to discuss water-related concerns or to learn more or to discuss potential different options, we help coordinate those consultations and those communications. Next slide, please. All right, so we talked about what the state water board does, and now we want to get into what do the 9 regional water boards do. So like we mentioned, these water boards are located throughout the state, and they also help protect water quality, and they protect water quality through the development and enforcement of regional water quality objectives. Once they develop these water quality objectives, those objectives are then used to develop basin plans. So using water quality objectives and using beneficial uses, they develop these basin plans that essentially guide how they're going to address the water concerns of their region. And this is also where tribal beneficial uses fit in as well. They also are responsible for monitoring that water quality and ensuring that the goals that are established in these basin plans are monitored and regulated effectively. So regulation and enforcement of these requirements is also a really big role of the regional water boards. So they determine where compliance is being met with these water quality objectives. They issue waste discharge permits, and they also take enforcement against actions for those who are violating those water quality objectives or other requirements. One thing I want to highlight about the regional water boards is that each regional water board has a tribal coordinator. And this tribal coordinator is in close communication with our tribal affairs team. So in terms of who is our contact person for the tribal beneficial uses, the folks who are on this panel are our main contacts for the tribal beneficial uses process. But your individual tribal coordinator at the region can provide specific information about where your region may be in the development of the tribal beneficial use process. All right, so now we've gotten an overview of who we are and what we do. I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic to Itzel, who's gonna be walking us through the basin planning process and the role that tribal beneficial uses play in the development of that process.
All right, thank you so much, Adriana, and thank you all so much for having us. Like Adriana said, my name is Itzel Vasquez-Rodriguez, and I am a staff member at the Office of Public Participation. So I'm going to walk you through the next couple of slides. And Sarah, if we could go to the next slide, please. Great. So Adriana, in her slide before this, mentioned how regional water boards work on something called a basin plan. And so I'm going to use the slide to go in depth on that just a little bit. Basin plans are documents that provide the foundation for all regional water board regulatory actions. Each region has their own separate basin plan, and the Central Valley actually has two basin plans, one for the north and one for the south. And each region also has staff that specifically work on this document. And these documents apply only to those geographic regions, which we saw a couple slides back. And basin plans contain 5 different points that I'll be talking about today. So for one, basin plans contain beneficial use definitions. And again, these beneficial use definitions only apply to this particular region, and it's essentially like a list of different beneficial uses that a region could use. A basin plan also includes designated beneficial uses. So these beneficial use designations could include tribal beneficial uses, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Basin plans also include water quality objectives, and those are used to protect beneficial uses, including tribal beneficial uses. Basin plans also include implementation plans and a description of monitoring activities that are needed. So permits for dischargers are written based on the beneficial uses and water quality objectives that are held within this basin plan. So this is sort of one of the key documents that a regional water board will work on. And I just want to flag for everyone on this call as well about a process called the triannual review, which some of you may have heard about. But triannual reviews are when regional water boards review their basin plans. It happens every 3 years, and it's used to determine a list of priority projects that will direct the efforts of a regional board over the next 3 years or so. And that process is required by federal and state regulations. So the words triannual review and basin plan are often used interchangeably, and they are connected. So we can go to the next slide, please. Awesome. All right. So now what we've all been waiting for, right? Tribal beneficial uses, what are they? So I've listed the 3 tribal beneficial uses here on this slide, the titles of each of them. You might have noticed I put a star next to subsistence fishing. because although it does not specifically mention California Native American tribes in its definition, it too can be utilized by California Native American tribes, by tribal members, as well as other interested people or just members of the public. And so tribal beneficial uses were actually created as a result of years of activism, studies, and advocacy that was done by Native American tribes and other parties, some of whom are on this call. And in May of 2017, the State Water Board adopted a resolution that essentially defined these 3 new beneficial uses that are listed on this slide. And tribal beneficial uses are meant to specifically protect cultural uses of water, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And those beneficial uses are tied to water quality objectives for mercury levels. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide, please. That'll have our definitions. Great. So these are the word-for-word definitions of tribal beneficial uses. Minus the subsistence fishing, you'll see I put it with a little star in the corner. The definition for subsistence fishing is actually almost identical to the definition for tribal subsistence fishing. It just doesn't include the words of California Native American tribes. So these definitions are also found on our Tribal Affairs webpage, and we'll be sharing that link towards the end of this presentation. So great, we have these definitions. But in order for these tribal beneficial uses to protect water bodies throughout the state and to actually make a change, regional boards could take at least 2 actions. So the first action a regional board could take would be to add 1 or more of these beneficial use definitions to their basin plan. So because tribal beneficial uses definitions are not actually contained within the basin plan for each region at the moment, regions have to individually adopt these definitions into their basin plan in order to use them. So a regional water board could do this by having what's called a basin plan update or amendment. That's a pretty common way, but this process alone can take some time. And another action that regional water boards can use that would protect water bodies with these tribal beneficial uses is it's kind of twofold. It would be to add 1 or more of the beneficial use definitions to their basin plan and designate 1 or more water bodies with that beneficial use. So this process can take multiple years, and it includes studies, data collection, public meetings, outreach, and as well as other steps. And tribes can and probably should be involved throughout this process, though it will take some time. So in order to specifically designate water bodies within each region with these tribal beneficial uses and protect them in that way, a regional water board likely will have to take those 2 actions. Okay, next slide, please. And then just for my final points, so the purpose of tribal beneficial uses, right? They are essentially a state tool to help protect activities that are specific to Native American culture and the historic uses of California waters. I just want to highlight that these tribal beneficial uses are the only beneficial uses that specifically mention California Native American tribes in their definitions, right? So they're specifically catered and are meant for California Native American tribes. And tribal beneficial uses can lead to changes in permitting. They can lead to changes in cleanup efforts, and they can lead to changes in the protection of water bodies themselves. So I just want to highlight that tribes can change and improve the water quality situation of certain water bodies by using tribal beneficial uses as a state tool. So to get more into how tribes can be involved, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Moises. So Moises, go for it.
Thank you for that overview, Itzel. And I just also want to thank Sarah again for, and I know there's another member on here, Sherry, that in the past have co-presented with us and kind of guided us to have more clearer information about how tribes could be involved in this process. So I just want to be mindful of that. So for the next slide, please, Sarah. So there are of various questions or questions that tribes could consider in how they could be involved in this process, even before this process, they contact the regional board. Is a tribe doing water monitoring? Do you submit water quality data to WQX or CDN? Has your tribe identified water bodies where tribal beneficial uses occur that would need the state to designate tribal beneficial uses through the Train Review process? And has your tribe identified your beneficial uses? Do you know the water quality objectives for those beneficial uses? These are some of the questions that are worthwhile to consider. Why be involved in this process? Well, from the California Fish Use Final Report that was done by UC Davis, and what we know, tribes have been fishing and eating fish for far longer than California has existed, since time immemorial. And although the fish consumption rates have varied or have changed drastically for various reasons, it is important to really protect these cultural uses. So being involved in this process is not just a matter of changing permitting, but it's also a way of protecting your culture or cultures. And so going to the next slide, Sarah, I just want to make sure that all of these slides are going to be given to you, and there'll be opportunities for you to be able to ask questions. But I'm also want to be mindful of time. So I'm going to go to slide 15, which is working with the regional boards very quickly. So one of the best ways to immediately connect with the water boards is to contact the regional tribal coordinator, as Adriana mentioned beforehand. Notify them if you think tribal beneficial uses should be prioritized as a project, preferably in writing. So this is a process. If you would like an example of how to go about that, you can most certainly reach out to our office. I know Shasta has put in the chat the link to our tribal affair contacts. And if you click on that link or get that link from us, you'll be able to then see who are our regional points of contact. And we do have an internal coordinating group in which our office receives updates on a regular basis. And if a tribal coordinator, for any reason whatsoever, is not getting back to you, that's where you have us to be able to facilitate any conversation. Then I'm gonna go, Sarah, to regional water board updates. We want to just talk about how, Shasta mentioned in the chat right now that the trend and review process is currently happening for the San Diego Regional Board. We want to just be mindful that the Southern California Tribal Chairpersons Association received a recent grant to do water quality monitoring and in relation to tribal beneficial uses in the LA area. The Keech Nation received funding from CalTHPO to also do water quality monitoring in relation to tribal beneficial uses. And last year, the California Indian Environmental Alliance received funding from CalTHPO to do outreach. These are some of the efforts that have been taken under place in recent years. And although the funding has been small in number, it has led for collaborations with our regional partners. I do want to talk about some of the efforts that were taking place this year. Just recently, last month, the Lahontan Regional Board adopted the definitions into their basin plan, and are looking forward to doing tribal focused outreach in this manner. Earlier this year, the San Diego Regional Water Board also adopted the definitions for tribal beneficial uses into their basin plan. And later this year, the Central Valley Regional Water Board anticipates adopting the definitions into their basin plan and furthering their outreach to California tribes. Next slide, please. And yeah, so at this moment in time, before I close out this section, I just want to give an opportunity to Chuck to talk about Region 1 efforts or the basin planning process there.
Sure, just real quickly, North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board adopted cultural beneficial uses all the way back in 2003 and made a number of designations along the Klamath and Trinity Rivers, Lake Earl up in Del Norte County, portions of the Eel River. So we have had some experience with application of those definitions in the North Coast region. Since the action of the state board a couple of years ago, we now have a new basin plan amendment project underway. I'm just about done developing the work plan for that, which includes an outreach strategy working through some of our regional organizations like ML-STEP, the Mendocino Lake Sonoma Tribal EPA programs, North Coast Resource Partnership, and also working with SIA. I wanted to refer you to the Klamath TMDL as an example of how these beneficial uses are utilized on the ground, or in the water, I should say. Chapter 2 of the Klamath TMDL is a really good example of both how cultural beneficial uses, but also how tribal water quality control plans themselves can be expressed in state regulatory instruments. It's a very creative and a very thorough treatment of not only the cultural beneficial uses of water, but tribal water quality criteria under other beneficial uses like cold and spawn and fishing and domestic and municipal water supply. So I just posted the link up there, and we will be working with North Coast tribes through the next couple of years on evaluating the suitability and efficacy of our existing definitions, and then looking at how we might adopt and utilize the definitions that were developed by the State Water Board.
Thank you, Chuck. And Sarah, just can we go to the final slide? This is tribal affairs contact information. You know, Adriana introduced herself earlier today. She's a tribal liaison. You could reach out to her at either triballiaison@waterboards.ca.gov or at adriana.renteria@waterboards.ca.gov. The contact information for our regional board tribal coordinators, as Shasta shared earlier in the chat, I'm going to put also our tribal affairs website where you could get our contact information, or you could do a deeper dive in there. Know that our website will be going under construction and sometime soon to make it more accessible to tribal governments. Now at this point, if there are any questions, and thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a couple minutes for questions, and then we'll move into Javier's presentation. And we will also have some more questions at the end. There was one question I see that says, Central Valley region is massive. Is that the Sacramento River Basin?
Yes, it includes the Sacramento Basin.
All right. I'm seeing if there are other questions. People are asking for the presentation. We'll definitely forward it. While I pull up Javier's, so thank you, Moy, Itzel, Chuck, and Adriana. We will have some additional questions at the end, I'm sure, and I will also be asking you some questions to answer for the group. I do want to bring up an example of a beneficial use issue. So the THPOs who are on this call and others who are on this call might not be working with all of these types of things like triennial reviews and TMDLs, and that's not necessarily the stuff that you have to work with on a regular basis. That might be happening more within your environmental department or the tribal administration. But as you can tell from this presentation, this thorough presentation, the water quality does affect the livelihood and the health and well-being of the people of your tribe. And to hear that if the tribes get involved in this, or as the tribes get involved, it could change the water quality standards for the water body that you're near. It could change the permits for the discharge and the pollution that's allowed to be let out from facilities that are there. And it could also change what types of herbicides are used on the water body. It's very, tribal uses are very specific to the tribe, and their exposures to these contaminants are very specific to the activity. And this is why it's important for the state to understand that tribal uses might look different from regular swimming, or they might be different from regular swimming, especially in terms of how much water might be swallowed or how often a person is in there. And what we're going to hear from Javier and also in our further discussion is, there's a lot of information that, of course, the tribes are going to hold close to their hearts and not share because of the, because of the sacredness of it. There's also information that the state is interested in, the regional boards are interested in, that's more about time and exposure and things that are, in our discussions as we move forward with the development of tribal beneficial uses, we have an opportunity to work with these regions and find ways to, to develop these lines of evidence and find ways to share that is not going to harm or impact these uses in any way. So I'm going to pull up Javier's presentation, and hopefully we'll be able to have some further understanding of that topic.
And thank you, Sarah. And you brought up something that I didn't think about, which this ties into, and this goes into jurisdiction, and this goes into, a lot of these other issues that tribes already involved in resource management. So, and I think there's a lot of legalities behind this too. And so, not only, I mean, just it's something that tribes should really focus in on and have a multiple approach on this rather than leaving it up to a THPO and leaving it up to an EPA department. So I'll get into that. And you can make it full screen, I think.
I am having difficulty because that's showing on my right-hand monitor and I can't move it over. So I hope that it is, oh, wait a minute.
That's fine.
I'll make it larger in that way. Okay.
Okay. So yeah. So here's, I want to go through my slides real quick. I am glad that the state provided enough information regarding beneficial uses, and it was a thorough explanation of what it is. And I wanted to thank you guys for inviting me as well as a tribal participant in this important discussion. It comes at a time that I'm working on various topics and working with the state on the definition and the vision of co-management between tribes and the state. And so this all just goes right in and connected. So you can go to the next slide. I am Javier Silva. I'm Northern Pomo. So that was the introduction. Here again is the definitions. I just put this up there mostly for me, but I think it's also, and I tell people this is accumulation of multiple minds and tribes coming up with the definition for all of us. So again, I don't like to group us in together, tribes as one. So each of these definitions can be defined by you and your tribe as you see fit. And so I think we did a hell of a job trying to get this as acceptable by the state as possible. So I just wanted to put this in here again. I think please revisit it and please understand what these mean and use these terms. Like the state said, these are tools for water quality improvement. So next slide, Sarah. So I wanted to talk about, as a tribal person who's worked with my tribe on on cultural protections, cultural resource protections, water, environmental enhancement. And so I wanted to provide you on when this should get done and how this should get done. We should already have a lot of this information. Tribes, I mean, we're working on this, and I mean, we have a lot of information that needs to get compiled and put together for the tribes to understand. We have resource management departments, THPOs, transportation, environmental, natural resources, fire departments that could come together, and health departments too, I forgot to mention them, to come together to come and talk about this specific topic, because you need to understand what the impacts have been. There are tribal members getting sick from gathering seaweed in this one particular area. Well, what's happening in that area? And that's gonna, take more than just one person, but gathering that information and having your tribal members trust where that information is going to go, and how impactful they're providing that information, sharing you that information would go. I have family members who still will not share with me locations, but they'll tell me what the issue is and what the problems are. And that's only because there's been a mistrust. Historically, we've been impacted. We provided a lot of information for the last, since we've been removed, and we usually get the short end of the stick, as you would say. So so here are a couple of examples of environmental departments doing some water quality monitoring. So if you have an environmental department, I would start with their water quality monitoring department and see what they're doing and seeing what they could add and what they can change to their work plan. Next slide. Here's a couple of impairments, couple slides with impairments. These are from my reservation that I had noticed. The one on the left is from a illegal cannabis cultivation on near a pond. They actually were growing right in the pond, and this pond was used for drinking water and for cultural purposes. So there's an example, and then the one on the right is from one of our streets where you have sedimentation, which also could be one of those impairments to the water quality. Go ahead to the next slide, Sarah. And here's a couple other ones, big projects that are impairments to tribal uses on these. This is Scott Dam on the Eel River. As you can see, it's kind of visually straight. You can see the impairment pretty much, and then the sewage discharge from a local municipality into the ocean. Not local, I think this is Southern California, but I didn't put a slide in here, but I wanted to mention that also quantity, and I think Sarah alluded to it, or someone, quantity is an impairment too. A drought, and those impacts to our waterways is another impairment, which I think everybody's having to deal with, and that goes into usage, that goes into water rights. So this is going to get into a big big topic, big issue for the tribe. So next slide. So I wanted to bring up the abalone issue real quick, because this is one of those species of concerns for many of our tribal members. And when we did an internal consumption survey for our tribe, abalone was listed as one of those high use priority species. And recently the state closed the recreational fisheries. So tribal members who had already had issues and not issues, but were already hindered from going and gathering, or even more so now. And so I just wanted to throw this out there. You should be getting something from the state, if not already, regarding a tribal allocation for tribes in red abalone. This is a first, pretty much. And this is one of those where I think that the entire state, all the tribes within the state should get involved in and should have some sort of position on this and involvement, participation. Next slide. I'm getting down to time. So kelp is one of the food sources of abalone, and this has been the impact to the abalone fishery. And I just wanted to show this graphic real quick to show you the state's data of aerial surveys of kelp through since 2008 up until a couple of years ago. And this is just the this is you know, a potentially impacted resource from, you know, cumulative impacts of pollution coming down the waterways. So anyways, next slide. I don't want to get too involved, but I think that everybody should get more information about that. Here's one of my traditional use areas and one of my species of concern, where I hope to, you know, develop better criteria, water quality criteria in the going into the ocean. So that's it for me. I wanted to save some time for questions and answers.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you so much for giving life to the words that we were saying and showing some really great examples of that. Are there specific questions for Javier right now? And if not, we will also go into a broader question and answer session. So any questions for Javier? Okay, I do see, let's see, there are a couple of comments that have come on the chat during both these presentations, or one of them is about the THPOs will be essential in developing evidence packages to support designation of tribal beneficial uses to specific waterways. And that is really a great place for us to start with some further discussion with the panelists. Knowing that that tribes have very specific uses with their specific water bodies. And let me also just say, because I don't think it's been said, you don't have to have trust land on these waterways for your tribe to be involved in the development of tribal beneficial uses. We're talking about waters, you know, rivers, creeks, lakes, usually not reservoirs, because those are things that were built more recently, but these water bodies that have been around for a long time that you have connection to because of your uses over many thousands of years.
Well, with the reservoirs, it's good to understand where that reservoir sits in a water, you know, within a, you know, a basin of concern.
True, like if it's something that has basically, it ends a river, then, you know, then we're talking about the water quality of that whole area. But I just wanted to say, it's within your traditional lands. It's water, so you can develop tribal beneficial uses and identify waterways within your traditional lands, not just trust land on the where your rancheria or reservation is right now. So this question of lines of evidence, and I'm glad Chuck is on the phone, but Chuck, what have you seen, and other panel members, what have you seen in terms of what tribes have shared so far and these discussions of development of beneficial uses? What have you seen that would be helpful for tribes to provide more of and communicate more of with regard to development of beneficial uses?
Well, it's important to acknowledge first that the lines of evidence are going to be different in different areas of the state. Basically due to the way, you know, the chronology and timing and manner in which California tribes were colonized from north to south and east to west. For the North Coast region back in 2003, I think there were 5 tribes along the Treaty Rivers that submitted maps, some narrative information, archaeological information. There can be different bins of evidence, and it's also important to know that it will probably be, these lines of evidence have not been codified or developed by the State Water Board or any of the regional boards. This is still an evolving process, and it's certainly open to discussion with the tribes about, and this is a crucial discussion to have with THPOs, is one, what evidence exists that they might bring forward to support a designation, and then what of that evidence would be could be made public. There has to be some public record to support designations. They can't be secret and they can't be arbitrary. So, and that's going to be different with different regions and different tribes and different parts of the state. So we're just kind of starting to have those conversations internally at the water boards, understanding that there could be fish consumption surveys that are done. There can be ethnographic information that's brought forward. There can be archaeological information, a number of different categories of information that would support these designation processes.
Anyone else want to comment on that question about lines of evidence?
Sarah, this is, oh, sorry, Moy. Do you want to go ahead? This is Shasta, but I was gonna jump in on that, but Moy, I want to let you go ahead.
No, I was going to mention that you had put in that you had a question. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead and block my camera. So in the conversations that I've had about this with Moy and Adriana and Itzel, one of the things that has come up is just being clear about what a tribal cultural use is. And so, what we're seeing there is like traditional use, subsistence fishing, that kind of thing. But so one of the concerns in the San Diego area is that there is gathering that takes place, traditional gathering, not just for foods, but for traditional plants that might be used for basket making. And so it's for my THPO colleagues, that's the reason I thought it was important for us to be the cultural side of things, because we're not just about the physical aspects of cultural protection. It's also about the living aspects of cultural protection. So when we're looking for what Chuck was saying, those lines of evidence for why those beneficial use designations should be made, that's the sort of thing that we're talking about. And I know that in the Northwest Coast region, thanks so much to Javier's work and making those definitions, which I applaud you, sir. That's a tough thing to do with those bureaucrats at the state. No offense to the young state people who are hopefully not bureaucrats yet, but that's why this is important, because it's not just culture, and it's not just environment, but it's both. The waters are living things and they're cultural things. So that's what I think people need to be thinking about when it comes to, as THPOs and as tribal members, providing that information. Now in San Diego, the regional board did vote to adopt the definitions, but we have yet to do the designations. So those are, and you guys are nodding, so I think I'm getting that right. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Adopting a definition is step one. Getting the designations is steps 2 through infinity. So just wanted to clarify
There's
that.
a lot more than that.
I do want to say that some regions are taking this first step of adopting the definitions into their basin plans. However, it is not necessarily step one. A regional board can adopt the definitions and designate. That is an option. Because the San Diego Regional Board had wanted to make sure that they did outreach and brought tribal governments to kind of have a meet and greet of all sorts, and kind of have this presentation and kind of get them all in the same similar understanding. They opted for the educational component first, which was to adopt the definitions and then work with tribal governments moving forward. This is not to say that another region can adopt definitions and designate at the same time.
It's also important to clarify that a specific segment of water body that does not have to be designated with a cultural beneficial use to be regulated based on the existence of those uses. So if a tribe wants to have the regional board go through an analysis, like in that chapter 2 of the Klamath TMDL, the designations don't have to exist for those water bodies yet. And technically the definitions don't even have to be adopted by the regional board yet. A tribe can request that the regional board evaluate the impacts to those uses if they exist in those waterways that they care about. This is just the adoption of definitions, and the designation of specific water bodies are just kind of to codify the defensibility of those analyses in law a little bit better. But we can use them, or tribes can request that regions conduct those analyses or have their dischargers conduct those analyses to protect those cultural uses, whether or not they've been designated yet.
And this is a great opportunity to also say that tribes with environmental departments, or if you do some environmental work, either way, this is a great time to be considering in the grants that are coming up, the Clean Water Act grants from US EPA, for example. You can put these types of activities both in your GAP grant and in your Clean Water Act grant to further determine your beneficial uses. And because these are ways to participate in protecting your local waters. And this is the state's route, but it is an effective route because it's using their own regulations to do it. And they have to provide for the protection of all of the uses of a water body. I want to also offer I'm going to share my screen for a moment one more time. Hopefully everybody can see that. There is a save the date on November 5th for all of you tribes, tribal members, staff, leadership, the councils who want to participate in more discussions about tribal beneficial uses and do some strategic planning. And this is sponsored by the California Indian Environmental Alliance. It's November 5th from 1 to 5. There is a click to register, which obviously you can't do that through the screen, but we will be sending this out. I'll be sending this to Shasta so she can send it out to the group, and they will be able to see more information about this. We want to be able to work as tribes and tribal staff to identify the things that are really important in terms of development of tribal beneficial uses throughout the state of California. So just know that if this is brand new to you, there's a bunch of us who've been working on it for a while, and we are happy to help with it. And now there's this strategic planning caucus that is developed. The first meeting will be, as I said, November 5th from 1 to 5 online. Thank you for that. Are there other questions?
And we have about 1 minute to go. I think we could have used more time for sure.
It's an hour and a half or a 2-hour conversation at least.
I just want to respond quickly to Rebecca Allen's question regarding the Delta Conveyance. So Rebecca asked, are water board staff involved or connected with the Delta Conveyance project as proposed by DWR, the Department of Water Resources? As the United Auburn Indian community looks at proposed plans for that project, we are dismayed at how many potential impacts to tribal beneficial uses that there are. The project could drastically change the Delta region. So yes, so that project is being led by the Department of Water Resources, and they're the state agency that sort of leads the water infrastructure portion, but there is an interagency collaboration between the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Board. So if, for example, the Sacramento region, the Delta region were to identify tribal beneficial uses in that area, those tribal beneficial uses could be able to be used in the review of proposed plans, right? So that's one way that you can connect sort of the use of tribal beneficial uses. So to clarify, that's a project led by the Department of Water Resources, but this could be a tool in your participation in that process.
And then lastly, thank you, Adriana. Lastly, I do want to mention to everyone in the panel that Sarah Ryan, aside from her role here, is also the Tribal Advisory Committee chair. And since last year has requested from the water boards quarterly updates on tribal beneficial uses, on regional board updates. And we have the latest update that will be shared, that is available. If you do want to know the status of your region, you could most definitely contact the tribal liaison at waterboards.ca.gov. If you want to be connected to a regional board, either you could contact them directly, or please use our office as a conduit to do that. But we do want to make sure that we do have quarterly updates on the status of regions. And if you do want to be more engaged, you could either contact Sarah or you could contact us directly.
Thank you. And those of you whose chat questions that we didn't get to, I did save the chat, so I'll accumulate some more answers to them and send them to Shasta so she can share them with you. I want to thank all the panelists for participating in this and bringing your knowledge and your good-heartedness to this, because I think we've got a lot of good people who are working on this topic, and it's a critical topic to be working on at this time. So thank you all so much for being a part of it, and also for the participants. We look forward to working with you further. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all. And that's into our next break, our final break. We have 28 minutes, but again, please stick around. We've got California State Parks with a couple of different really interesting and exciting projects to talk about. The Tribal Digital Atlas, and we're going to have a presentation on cannabis. So definitely that's a perfect way to end our 2 days with a presentation on the effects actually of illegal cannabis grows and cultural resources. So with that, we'll start our last break, and I'll see you back here at 4 o'clock.